So today, as we said, that we'll wrap up this fluorescence with a basic discussion about the instrumentation and few of its application. Now, fluorescence spectroscopy as such is a very broad aspect. I mean, it itself is a course. So we'll not discuss the details of each of these applications because they are very broad. I mean, aspects, broad subjects, but we'll try to touch up most of the relevant and most of the very important applications of fluorescence spectroscopy. First, let us start with the instrumentation. So, this is a basic diagram of a typical fluorimeter. You can see, right? It's shown here. Now, it consists of this. See, first of all, as all the spectrophotometers, they have a light source. Here also we have a light source, and this is a xenon light source which is ozone free. This generates a continuum of visible and ultraviolet light, right? Usually it can generate from 200 to 900 nanometer. Now, along with this, what you have? You have a monochromator. So this is the monochromator. I mean, this square is the monochromator chamber, right? System. Now, after that, which this monochromator actually select the required wavelength for excitation, and a sample compartment is here. This is the sample chamber, right? Now, a second monochromator is there along with photomultiplier tube, PMT. The photomultiplier tube is there, right? Now, what is about the second? Why you need a second monochromator? This second monochromator is used to analyze the fluorescence signal, right? Emission monochromator. So, this is two monochromators are used here, and the second monochromator is attached with a photomultiplier tube to produce a voltage there. Okay. Now, the grating in this excitation monochromator, right? I mean, as I said, that it can disperse light from 200 to 900 nanometer. The entrance and exit slits. See, so what is happening is, see, this light is reflected from a prism, right? This entrance and the exit slits, right, of this monochromator actually controls the intensity and wavelength spread of the light. Right? The illumination from this xenon lamp is actually directed towards the elliptical mirror, right? This again reflects is back to the entrance slit. This elliptical mirror actually reflects is back to the entrance slit of the monochromator, right? And then it again gives it back to another elliptical mirror, which redirects it to through actually various sophisticated optical arrangement to the sample, the sample chamber, right? This excitation monochromator actually delivers narrow band of wavelength of excitation light, right, that strikes the sample. Now, after striking the sample, right, all of them does not fluoresce. All the molecules do not fluoresce. Right? A portion of the incident light is absorbed by the sample, and some of the molecule fluoresce. Now, this emitted light, this emission, right? Emitted light enters the monochromator, emission monochromator, which is positioned at right angle. You see, there is a basic difference between the UV visible spectrophotometer and this spectrophotometer. Right? In UV visible spectrophotometer, the source, right, the this source, the sample and the detector was in one line, same line, right? But in this case, this is at a 90 degree. See, this is at 90 degree, kept at 90 degree. Why it is so? First of all, this emission is anisotropic, right? It can happen in all direction. And why it is kept at 90 degree? So that to minimize the reflected light, right, and some incident light reaching the detector. Some incident light may also reach the detector, and some transmitted light. To minimize them, it has been kept in the 90 degree. Okay. Now, when this emitted light actually again passes through a monochromator system and reaches the detector, right? Ultimately the detector. Now when it reaches the detector, the signal is then amplified, and it generates a voltage which is proportional to the emitted intensity. We saw these emitted spectrums, right? Now this right angle geometry is used for transparent samples. If the sample is transparent, for example a solution of clear solution of any sample, right? But if the sample is opaque or it is a solid subject, right, then a arrangement is there that is called front face geometry, right? So where you detect, the detector is kept at the same in the same phase from where this incident light is falling on the sample. That is for solid samples, but generally fluorescence is done with mostly with liquid samples, right, for routine purposes. Okay, so this was the basic apparatus system, instrumentation system. Now even if this is very seems to be complicated, you can also minimize it. If you have to draw this in any case anywhere, you can minimize this by omitting this kind of optical arrangements here. You can just write here monochromator, right? That will suffice. Light source to monochromator. Just remember that for a fluorimeter, spectrophotometer, you have to draw it such that the sample and the incident light and the emitted light are at 90 degrees. This is important in case of this spectrophotometer. Now we move on to some applications. Right. Now let us see if we can see some applications of fluorescence spectroscopy. Right? In fact, there are numerous applications. Right? We'll only, I think, one. I think already I have mentioned. Right? I'll just mention it again. Right? So first, you can say one of the important application is laser-induced fluorescence scopy of human tissues. Human tissues for cancer diagnosis. This is very important use of fluorescence spectroscopy, that is mostly used in medical medicinal purposes. See, as I said, that this laser induced fluorescence spectroscopy is widely used for detection of this carcinogenic cells in human bodies, right? Now what is done here? See, you are first, I mean the patient or this subject is first induced, I mean injected or administered with some drugs which are generally this one, right? Hematoporphyrin, hematoporphyrin derivatives. Now, what this hematoporphyrin does? See, if I inject or administer a drug that is fluorophore, right, in a human body or any other animal body, what will happen? It will be excreted, right? So you cannot do anything. But what happens? There are some drugs or molecules which targets the tumors. Hematoporphyrin is one of them. Hematoporphyrin derivatives. They are actually selectively retained by tumors. They are selectively retained by tumors. Right? So suppose this is administered in the in morning 10 a.m. So after say in the evening it is equilibrated, right? So all of other parts, whatever that is retained by the tumors is fine. The others are excreted, or it is going. Suppose it is excreted through the excretion system. Right? Now whatever is excreted, then this laser is introduced by this fiber optics, as it is done with this colonoscopy or say what is that, endoscopy, right? Now if you this laser is shown on that tissues or these tumors, right, and so these drugs then fluoresce. Okay, so by detecting that fluorescence, right, you can easily, by scanning that body, you can easily detect that where the tumor is and if there is tumor at all or not, because any other thing will the healthy tissues will not supposed to retain these hematoporphyrin derivatives, right? So this is how it is done. Okay. Another thing which we also mentioned, I mean that story of Rhine and Danube, right, that is used to study the pollutant, study the petroleum pollutant, for marine environment, right? Marine environment, right? Now this petroleum, right, they actually absorb and emit in the region of 270 to 400 nanometer. Now suppose there are always oil spills, all these things are happening, right? So how to detect them? As fluorescence is highly sensitive, right, they can even detect very small amount of these pollutants if it is there present, right, in marine environment or in water, right? So for environmental controlling authorities, they can easily use this fluorometer in their aid to study these petroleum pollutants, right? Because they emit around in this region 270 to 400 nanometer. Of course this is in UV region, so you cannot see the color of that, but this phenomenon of fluorescence is still there, right, though it is in UV region. Okay. Next, all these things are actually I mean I should have mentioned it before, this sensing, for sensing purpose. See, this is also sensing. Sensing is nothing, I mean sensing of petroleum is there, right? the detection of petroleum is sensing of petroleum. Now, sensing of anions, mainly of anions and cations, right? Sensing of ions, right? Both anions and cations, mostly anions, have been extensively studied by this fluorescence. What it does is, suppose you introduce a fluorophore, right, which has high intensity of fluorescence. Now, this is such a fluorophore that in presence of a particular ion, the fluorescence intensity will decrease. This decrease is called quenching. Quenching of thirst. You have heard this term, quenching. So quenching of fluorescence is decrease of its intensity. Right? So there are several ways how it can be quenching. There is quenching mechanism. I have not mentioned it deliberately because that is another aspect. Quenching. Right? Quenching can happen by different methods. So here, putting away all the other methods which are responsible for quenching. For example, quenching can also appear for dissolved oxygen. Right? So fluorescence is actually done with in inert atmosphere. Right? The solution is first purged. The solution is first bubbled through. The xenon or argon, nitrogen. These gases are first bubbled through the solution and then fluorescence is done. Because if there is dissolved oxygen in high amount, then it can quench the fluorescence. Right? Because oxygen has unpaired electrons. These unpaired electrons interact with the unpaired electron of the excited state, and as such they do not fluoresce. The fluorescence is quenched. Right? So, okay, we will not discuss this quenching here. We will just say that there are something that can quench. Right? So, this quenching can be used to detect a fluorophore. Right? Suppose I have a compound here, right? Suppose a metal compound is there or anything which have a structure, a shape like say something like this. Right? Whenever a metal ion, another metal ion sits here, right, it changes its shape to say like this, but a particular shape is there. It reorients, right. Now if it reorients like this, right, then it acts like a different compound. Now this compound, particular compound, may have less fluorescence intensity or may have more fluorescence intensity. If it has less fluorescence intensity, the fluorescence of the starting material will quench, and if it is more fluorescence intensity, then it will increase. So by both the cases we can detect, or that is called sensing. Right? Now this is extensively mostly used for detecting fluorides, perchlorates. Detection of perchlorates is very important because these perchlorates are used in explosives. Right? For explosives, you can also detect nitrates mainly, right? All these. Now you can also detect cations, but cation detection is more difficult than anion detection. But this is one of the major uses of this fluorescence spectrometer in analytical chemistry, and in forensic science also this is used very much. Right? This sensing. Okay. Another important part is this accurate detection of glucose. Now there are fluorescence sensors who can sense glucose also. Right? Now this is very important. Right? You can there are biomolecule stabilized gold nanoparticle. I think you have heard the name of nanoparticles, right? nanoparticles, right? So they have to be stabilized, right? Nanoparticles are nothing but the when the uh, the size of the particles are in the region of nanometer, we say they are nanoparticles, right? It was always present, like colloids. Colloids are in the range of nanoparticles. They are neither precipitate nor in solution. Okay. Now these colloids have to be stabilized, right? There has to be some stabilized, otherwise they attach with each other and precipitate. Right? So these gold nanoparticles are stabilized by biomolecules. Right? Now they have been seen that these gold nanoparticles, biomolecule stabilized gold nanoparticles, are fluoresce. They fluoresce, right? Now they can act as a fluorescence probe. Fluorescence probe, right, for sensitive and selective detection of glucose, right? So they can selectively, this is important, right, selectively why this is important? Because if this gold nanoparticle changes its fluorescence properties with some other chemicals also, then it is not usable, right? Because when you administer it in the sample, right, it can react with other things also, so you are not sure if glucose is there or not. So you have to scan it for different molecules and see that it is only applicable to glucose, right? So it can selectively detect glucose. So this is important. Okay. Now I think we have been found, right? Fine. Okay. Now fluorescent indicators are there. Right? I think you remember the picture of last lecture, right? Where there are several fluorescent dyes. Most of those dyes can act as fluorescent indicators. For example, eosine, fluorescent, right? They can act as fluorescent indicator. Suppose in a reaction, right, the product or after the end point is such that by addition of this suppose say proton or this hydrogen or OH, right, this structure of this fluorescent moiety will change, right? This fluorescence will change. So if it changes, the fluorescence will not be there, or suppose it was not there, it changed to a fluorescent property. So by changing these fluorescent properties, it can act as fluorescent indicators, right? Like phenolphthalein act as an acid base indicator. It changes from acidic color of colorless to a basic color of pink, right? These things can also happen here. It will change in fluorescence properties, and they can also be used as fluorimetric reagents, fluorimetric reagents. What are these? These are used for detection of inorganic substances. These are same as one of the parts of sensing only, right? It is nothing else. See, this is quinoline. Sorry, I have not drawn it correctly. this is quinoline and this is 8-hydroxyquinoline, right? This is substance, right, is used for this detection of lithium, right? Similarly, benzoin, we have heard this name, I think, benzoin in benzoin condensation, right? Benzoin is used for detection of zinc, right? Alizarin is used for the detection of aluminium, right? These are all fluorophores, right? Okay, and lastly, I just mentioned that they are also used for DNA sequencing, right? DNA sequencing. So we will not go into details of each of them, just few of the applications are this laser induced fluorescence spectroscopy for detection of cancer, study of petroleum pollutant for marine environment, sensing of ions, both anions and cations. So they why these are used for sensing? Because this fluorescence is very sensitive instrument. It can sense in even if they are present in very small low concentration, right? In fact, now it is possible to detect single molecule also. Okay. Now, for accurate detection of glucose, these fluorescent indicators, fluorimetric agents for detection of these inorganic substances, lithium, zinc, aluminium, beryllium, right? They are there, and DNA sequencing. Right? Okay, so today we end this discussion about fluorescence spectroscopy.